classic piece that we've had the opportunity to put together a time or two. Hope you enjoy it. The poem is entitled The Bronco Twister's Prayer. It was written by Bruce Cascadden many years ago, and I'm pretty sure you'll recognize the song that goes along with it.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, that once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
It is just a little graveyard on a rolling foothill plains, bleached by sun in summer, swept by winter snows and rains, and there a small bunch of settlers had gathered on an autumn day around a homemade lumber coffin with their last respects to pay. Weary men who'd wrung their living from this hard and arid land, and beside them stood their women, faded wives with toil-worn hands. Now among us stood one figure who was wiry, straight, and trim. Every man among us knew him. 'Twas the Bronco Twister, Jim. Now, he was just a bunch of hardened muscle, tempered with savage grit, but he had the reputation of a man who'd never quit. Well, he'd helped to build the coffin, and he'd helped to dig the grave, and I guess his instinct seemed to teach him how he really should behave. We didn't have no preacher. The crowd was mighty slim, just two women with weak voices sang an old-time funeral hymn, and that is all we had for service. My wife was sobbing there for her husband of a lifetime to be laid away without a prayer. But then she seen that Bronco peeler. She walked right up to him and put one trembling arm around him and said, "Pray, please, won't you, Jim?" Well, you could see his figure straighten, and a look of quick surprise flashed across his swarthy features and his hard daredevil eyes. He could handle any bronco, and he never dodged a fight, and that is the first time anybody ever seen his face turn white. But he just swept that big sombrero off his rough and shaggy head, and how I wish I could remember what that Bronco peeler said. He just looked off towards the shadows, towards the mountains where the drifting shadows played, and I'll bet silence reigned in heaven when they heard the way Jim prayed. Now, a lot of years have passed since that small funeral in that little graveyard lot, but it give us all a memory and a lot of food for thought. As we stood there by the coffin in that freshly broken sod with that reckless Bronco breaker talking heart to heart with God. Now, when at last the prayer had ended and the grave had all been filled on his rough and half-broke pony, he just rode off towards the hills. We stood there in amazement as we watched him ride away. No words could ever thank him. There was nothing we could say. Now, since that little funeral, it's been nearly 50 years. With all their hopes and sorrows, and all their joys and fears. But I hope when my life's ended and they go to lay me with the dead, that some cowpuncher says a prayer above me. Just like that Bronco twister said.
"'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, in grace my fears relieved. Oh, how precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch